Let's welcome the moderator, Lynne Marlor. Oh, sorry. Lynne Marlor serves on the board of the Giantbug Education Foundation, which strives to eliminate education inequality as it relates to race, income, and gender. Lynne is passionate about helping Giantbug Education Foundation to develop their strategies and promote the changing face of the global education of students, both domestically and internationally. So welcome, Lynne.
Okay, I have to make sure I can do this with one hand. Can you? Yeah, is that already working? Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm really excited to be here today, and I'm excited to bring my the panelists up. So looks like we got a nice diverse crowd, and I appreciate you having me here. I'm a little out of my element. I'm not in education, but I'm very passionate about it. So do you folks want to join me up here? I'm going to invite Ross. Ross Weissman is the research and director, if you will, of academics for Knovva Academy. Thank you for joining us. And he is also... He's also a graduate of the Harvard School of Education. As part of his job at Knovva, he provides a meaningful and rigorous blended learning opportunities for his students from around the world. He's worked in several disciplines. As I mentioned, he went to Harvard School of Education, and we're very happy to have him here. So thank you for joining us. I think we're going to take seats, right? It would be easier for all of us to sit down, more casual. So. And then we have Cynthia Durain. Cynthia, welcome. Come join us. Cynthia is the Foreign Language Department Chair for the Norwood Public Schools and co-coordinator of the Global Citizenship Program Certificate at Norwood High School, which is in Massachusetts, where four of us are from. And she's been teaching Spanish for 25 years and has been the department chair for 14. She started a program at Norwood called Global Citizenship Program Certificate for students, which coordinates exchanges and student travel opportunities for virtual exchanges with students from Norwood High School and abroad, which is very fun and exciting. And then we have Kate. Kate Fluke is a French teacher. Thanks for joining us, Kate. At the Coakley Middle School, which is also in Norwood, Massachusetts. And Kate has been teaching French for 20 years and facilitates, okay. Is that anything important? Huh? Just keep going? Okay. And Kate is, she facilitates something called the Coakley Ambassador Program and a virtual exchange opportunities at Coakley. So, no idea. Okay. You know? Oh, well. Okay. And then last but not least, Grace Dong is the lead school designer in EL Education. Yeah? Thanks for joining us. She is also working on her doctorate in education leadership at UCLA, which she just told me she's going to do full-time and work full-time. Okay. You know, I feel like a slouch. And she got her Master's of Education in Teaching from the Harvard School of Education. At EL Education, Grace works with school principals, leadership teams, and teachers to develop strategic planning to lead professional development on Common Core project-based learning. She had coached 200+ teachers on best practices for differentiation, vertical planning, data analysis, and assessment. So I'm going to take a seat. I want to thank everyone on the panel for joining us today. Today. So we're all going to get a little more cozy, right? And we have about 3 questions that we're going to pose to the panelists. And you know, I know we have a very diverse group out there. I'm sure you're eager, as I am, to learn about what they're going to say about the changing face of education. It really is changing. So I'll start with you, Grace, but then I'll just go down the line. And then I'll start the other side so we all get a chance. You know, you're all educators and teachers from very diverse backgrounds and professions. To get us started, I'm very interested in learning, you know, why did you pick education? And I guess more importantly, how do you want to, you know, the educational training that you have, how do you see that impacting the world? So Grace, maybe I'll start with you. How did you pick education, and then how do you see it impacting the world? How would you like it to impact the world?
Sure. Well, thank you, Lynn, for that lovely introduction. I started with education actually by accident. Being part of an Asian American family, you can probably guess the three occupations you're allowed to have growing up. Being a doctor, being an engineer, being a lawyer. I didn't want to do any of those three things. So it was interesting to grow up and really feel that I wanted to do something a little different. I wanted to do something impactful that I was really passionate about. And what I really was passionate about was the equity piece. I really felt that not all students really had access to high quality education. And I began to ask myself those questions, why, right? Why is it that certain kids get better teachers? Why is it that certain kids get to work in schools where they have opportunities to really expand their learning? Why is it that certain districts get more money than other districts and are able to do really innovative things? And so asking those questions naturally drew me into education, even though it was sort of an accident. More of a rebellion, but sort of an accident on my part. I think in terms of the second question you're asking, Lynn, around, how does this become impactful? I really feel that education is the civil rights issue of our time. In essence, it is impactful because it affects all of us, right? We know that great schools produce great kids, and great kids produce the next generation of innovation, and the next generation is really what we're looking for in terms of the future. So that's really where I'm looking for, is really pushing student achievement to the next level and seeing that growth from all sectors and across the board.
And Kate.
I have always had a passion for languages. I teach French and have been teaching French for 20 plus years. So I thought, what could I do with my French passion? And I thought that it would be a great idea to impart that on kids and try and get them excited to have that another language skill, which is very important in especially today's day and world. Not necessarily just French or just Spanish, but any language that they can put under their belt. It's easier than to learn a second, a third, a fourth. So that was my draw to education. I feel like I'm imparting some globalization to the kids, that there's a life outside their small town. We try and do a lot of culture things to get them to realize that their epicenter is not the epicenter of the world.
Terrific. Ross.
Well, thanks for having me, and thank you for being willing to listen to me talk for a couple minutes. I appreciate also that question being the first question that we're asked. I know the conference behind us is bannered an investment in business opportunity, and I had a chance to talk to a couple folks about that potential friction in an educational setting that's interested in making money, but then in the process can also be disconnected from maybe its core value of what education is supposed to be about. So education to me is both something that's universal. We do it all the time. We did it since we were babies. We both formally learn it when our parents instruct us how to count, how to learn the alphabet, but we also do it passively. We sit back and we absorb language and culture and all of that as well. So it's universal, and we do that hopefully from our childhood, and we do it through the rest of our whole lives. But it's also a point of great depth. It's not just a point of it's technical depth. It's to open up doors for economic opportunity, which is one of the core values of this conference today. And it's also a depth of meaning. And I think for me personally, when I've connected with certain teachers in my life who've helped me go deep into a content and go deep into myself in that process, those have been some of the most important relationships, period. So education for me is about extending those opportunities for kids moving forward.
And why did you choose education?
Because those relationships are just so significant, and the potential behind that. And the more kids can have those opportunities, the more I want to help them get there.
Thank you very much for having me here this evening. I started teaching as a result of having traveled to Spain during my high school experience. I lived with a family for 3 weeks, and it changed my life. I grew up in a really small town outside of Boston. My high school was grades 7 through 12. My class was only 90 students. So talk about thinking that the epicenter of your world was your town, and then finding out that there was a much bigger place other than where I grew up. So I really was inspired by that experience to go into teaching, and my passion was languages, so Spanish was something that I thrived at and loved to learn. So starting out teaching high school in Norwood, one of the first things I tried to do was to take kids abroad, and it's just sort of skyrocketed from there. We've got all kinds of opportunities that we now offer to kids. We're super proud of those opportunities, and I think that part of the impact that we see is that those kids get inspired, and they go on to do things like service learning in places all around the world because of things that they've learned about in our classrooms, or because things that they've seen with us through field experiences. So when a kid comes back 10 years later, and I think to myself, gosh, you still remember, me or that experience or that particular lesson, I think that's the impact that inspires me every day to keep doing what we're doing.
Great. Well, thank you, Cynthia. And I'm going to start with you on the second question. We'll go the opposite way. As we can see, just looking outside in this room here today, we live in a very global world, and I think we're more interconnected than ever. Would each of you speak about what it means to prepare people or to prepare students for a global a world, to actually thrive in a global environment? And if you could explain a little bit how you think that you do that, how do you do that and bring value to that? So I'll start with you, Cynthia.
Okay, so I think a huge part of being a global citizen is learning a language. So we expose kids in our district. We financially can only fund 4 languages, so we teach French, Spanish, German, and Latin. But we try to give kids opportunities and find scholarships for them to explore other languages that we don't have the money to teach in our district. So we have a student who just received a scholarship for the whole next school year to go to Malaysia. She's going to study there for a year. We had another student who got a scholarship last year to go abroad for the year to go to Taiwan. We have another student who's going to Milan this summer for a scholarship. So we're constantly seeking opportunities and funds to get kids out of their comfort zones, out of those 4 walls of the classroom. And I think our Global Citizenship Program has been instrumental in providing those opportunities for kids. We practice 3 basic tenets: think critically, communicate effectively, and contribute responsibly. And we have as requirements for the kids that get that certificate that they have to spend time abroad or participate in one of our virtual exchanges, because some of our kids can't travel for lots of different reasons, most of them financial. But we also have academic requirements that come into play. That's the language learning and the communication piece, and service learning as well. So the contribute responsibly, everybody has to complete a capstone project that includes some sort of community service, whether it's a domestic or international.
Terrific.
So global skills, right? Why are we doing this ed tech stuff? Why are we teaching kids global skills to begin with? What are these global skills? Maybe that's the first question, is like, what are we even talking about? At least that's what comes to my head. And I think we can think about global skills in a lot of different ways. We can think about being able to think about issues around the world affairs, politics, an interconnected economy. I think in education sector, when we talk about global skills, it often means global relationships and the capacities to have those relationships, to work together with someone from another part of the world, from a different culture, from a different landscape. And I think that's something that most people take for granted. That's a very simple process. We're all people, and we are all people. We identify a person, everybody has a head, maybe they have 2 arms, right? We have a typical phenotypic understanding of what a person looks like. but to really allow a relationship to happen, whether that's for the purpose of serving and addressing educational inequality, or it's just to work in partnership on a common goal in the professional workplace. That requires a more complicated competency to understand a person in their wholeness. So I know in Knovva, I'm happy that we work on this. In February, we ran a program. We had about 100 students from both China and the United States that came together for a program where they can come together and work together to learn about one another and to practice building relationships and addressing some of those cultural subtleties that maybe we take for granted. And we do that online and in person, and I think that's one of the most important global capacities in my mind that students need to be developing for this next century.
Kate, do you need me to repeat the question? Or?
Yes, I do.
Okay, sure. So obviously, we live in a global economy and a global world. What does it mean to prepare, students to thrive in this global world? And how do you think that you do it? Like, what are some of the things that you do in your classroom or day to day?
So I teach the younger grades. I have ages 11 through 14. So taking those younger children abroad is a little tricky. So what we've been doing is using virtual exchanges, and we have a virtual exchange with a school in Delft in the Netherlands. And the kids were nominated by their academic teachers to be involved in this program. And it's really taken off. The kids are embracing it. They're seeing the world in a different way, how people eat differently, how they go to school differently, how they learn differently. It's making them look inward to see if what they're doing is actually what they should be doing. I just feel that in order to get the globalization of these children, it needs to start younger and younger and younger so that it becomes a natural progression in life, that it's, again, your town or your city or your country is not the end-all be-all of human existence. So,
Grace.
A lot of what I think about in terms of globalization is really where we are today and why did we get here, right? So we think in schools, why do we have this similar structure that we've had for the past 15, 20 years in producing the same outcomes that we know are not working for kids, right? So how do we improve student outcomes in a way that really produces authentic work and allows students to be those 21st century learners, right? So then what does 21st century learners mean? I think about this in my work with districts. Right now I work really closely with Oakland Unified and a couple of San Diego Unified schools. And using the framework of partnership of 21st century learners around creativity, collaboration, critical thinking. These are all skills that we want students to have because we know that just the core competencies of subject-based areas are not going to be enough to really survive or even thrive, as Lynne is mentioning, in a world where 65% of the jobs in the next 5 years we don't even know about, right? So what are the skills that we need to get kids to think critically, be innovators, tinker, look deeply into questions that they want to solve in their own classes, and then provide the infrastructure as a school for that to happen, right? So that would mean creating maker spaces, have innovation labs, providing time for teachers to really collaborate with each other during professional learning communities, during staff time, and really treat the profession of education as innovation.
Well, I have to say, having kids go through school, I think that the education system definitely needs innovation, and it's very exciting to hear about some of the things that all of you are doing, because the cultural stuff is so critical. It seems very subtle, but it's really not subtle. And just there's so many issues facing kids today. So I applaud you all. I think it's very exciting about what you're doing. One of the things that is really at the foundation, I know, Cynthia, you mentioned this, of global competencies and learning, is language. Some of the programs each of you talked about, as dynamic and different and innovative as they are, they all could provide or pose significant challenges relative to language. So can you answer how your work is connecting language learning in your environment? So in EL, how does language impact that? How do you incorporate language into this program?
So I think that language is really ultimately at the very foundation an issue of equity, right? So how do we make sure that all the students, regardless of their native language or their background geographically, socioeconomically, ethnically, are able to really access the instruction that we give to them, right? Within EL, I do a lot of that alignment across the different grade levels in schools as a whole school model, also with districts. We do training and professional development to make sure that all teachers know what kinds of lessons really produce positive outcomes for students of all types of linguistic backgrounds. We provide time, and that's always the crucial piece. We provide time for this space to happen and for teachers to really be innovative about practices that haven't been set out yet, right? So because all the research that we've done around linguistic ability, about first language acquisition, is still fairly new in its field in comparison to other sectors of education. I think there's a lot of work to be done, and really excited to be part of this work with my excellent panelists here.
Our district has moved forward into a proficiency-based, being language teachers, a proficiency-based program. We have a 90% target language instruction model. So the kids come in September, and I had a classroom full of 11-year-olds, and I started speaking French, and they barked at me, they screamed at me, some of them cried, and by now they're speaking, and their input and their output is amazingly more, I hate to use the word proficient, than say our last year's 6th graders or the year before 6th graders. So language is to try and make it as authentic as possible as they learn their native language. To learn a second language has been having fantastic results.
Language learning, I totally agree. This is the basis of a lot of global competency, and it's also the basis for a lot of EdTech, especially in China. And there's a lot of reasons why people are trying to learn language, both to succeed in taking a test, whether it's to help them get to university, or to give them some proficiency in moving over to the West if they want to go do work there, or they want to enroll in college. I think one of the limitations, in my opinion, about a lot of the EdTech platform that's focusing on language is that it's so test-focused. It's so test-focused. It focuses on language as a very technical thing. Language as a system of letters, a system of grammar and syntax, right? But language is much more than syntax. It's much more than where you put the comma, right? Language is both a reflection of culture, and it's also a creator of culture. So if someone sits and memorizes lots of words and memorizes where to put whatever punctuation point, they probably can do well on a TOEFL test, or they could do well on the Gaokao. They could. But how fluent are they with the language? Because in order to know the language, you also have to learn the culture. And I think that everyone on the stage is also saying is that there needs to be this other element of involvement and engagement with the culture simultaneously with the language learning. That's something that at Knovva that we also focus on, is that we want to embed both interpersonal relationships with Chinese and American students to help them in this process of really socialization, that it can't be just in a book and removed from that. And giving them the space to learn both the technical skills but also to practice it with one another in an ongoing way. I think the more that we kind of think about language in that way, the more we'll be able to help the next generation really open the doors for themselves. They're taking online learning to open doors, for the most part, professionally, educationally, and if we can take also the way that we view language learning to the next level, then I think the doors will open even more for our students.
So, as Kate said, in our district, we have adopted a proficiency-based model, primarily because what we were hearing from our students over and over again is, well, I've taken language since 6th grade, I'm graduating, and I still can't speak. Or I don't feel like I have the conversational skills that I need in order to immerse myself in a country if I were to go to study abroad. So we decided to put our textbooks aside and use authentic materials to teach the language. We focus on the interpretive mode, interpersonal mode, and presentational mode. So we do a lot with videos and print sources that were created for native speakers in the language. And while that might seem like torture to do that with a 6th grader, the tasks that the kids do with those sort of sources are geared to their level of language. So we just did, earlier in the year with the 6th grade class, they watched a commercial for back-to-school products that is shown in France. And the kids were amazed at the number of words that they could understand, and then the questions that they could start to ask each other based on what they had seen in the video. Then we went one step further when we found actual school lists that schools in France and in Mexico give their students, that, you know, these are the supplies that you need in order to be successful this year in school. And the kids had a blast with packing backpacks with supplies based on that list, or one group did, they packed backpacks to send to a country. You know, they were fake backpacks, but the activity was to send them to a group of students who were in need. And their level of proficiency at which they were able to perform it was far greater than in past years. So we just actually tested a group of students for the Seal of Biliteracy. That's a new initiative this year, using the AAPPL test that was developed by the American Council for Teachers of Foreign Languages. And we were thrilled that most of our students, about 95% of them, scored at the intermediate, high, or advanced level. So that was huge. So we're expecting even better results now that we've gone to this particular model.
I know I have lots of other questions, but I think we're out of time. So are we out of time here? About 3 minutes left. I don't know if we want to open it up to anybody that has maybe one quick question. We've got about 3 minutes. No questions? Yes. Well, maybe we could get a mic. I think it was, can you tell us more about the virtual exchange program?
Sure. We use the web app Seesaw, where the kids can post pictures and videos and bios because of the time difference in real time, and the kids have actually formed some pretty close relationships with the other students because of our testing schedule and the testing schedule in the Netherlands. Feel free to jump in, Cindy. Feel free. We have yet to be able to have a Google Hangout, but we plan on doing that once all the testing is over, so the kids can actually meet in FaceTime. But the app Seesaw, I don't know if I'm supposed to be saying that app, but the app Seesaw has been really, really helpful, and they're having a blast with it.
Good job.
Okay, well, I guess we're not.
No. Well, thank you all very much. Oh, one more? We got time for one more? We got a minute and 20 minutes. Okay. Gotta run.
I get a mic, awesome. So there's a lot of, you guys are talking a lot about languages and stuff. So I work in virtual reality. Like, what do you think the future is of like kids? So I've had my son actually do virtual reality, and he learned stuff like, we had like a dinosaur app where he learned like how big a brontosaurus was and a titanosaurus was and things like that. Like, what kind of stuff for like immersive languages? Like, the mind loves to be in these immersive environments. Like, what do you think the future of that could be for education? Which is, it's coming. Virtual reality is a huge thing. So What do you guys think about that?
We just actually tried to do a virtual reality experience through the Global Nomads group, and we couldn't get enough money to get all the glasses that we needed. We got about half. So it wasn't a great introduction to it because some kids felt like they didn't get enough time with it, but it was amazing to be able to take a trip without leaving the classroom and actually feel like you were there. So we would love that. Yeah, not being very articulate about that because I'm super excited about that idea.
Yeah.
Our district is very diverse. 34% of our students are on free and reduced lunch. So to be able to expose them to things, outside of Norwood where we are, like that would be awesome. And you would be amazed at the impact that something like that has and what it does to inspire a kid to feel like somebody cared enough to show them that, and what it motivates them to do is amazing.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, talk to me because I'm sure there's a lot of companies out there that would, like Google and Samsung and those stuff, would love to test out what the impact of virtual reality would be from the future. So for sure. Awesome.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, we did it. We're out of time. Thank you all very much. Thank you, panelists. Appreciate it.
Thank you.